She didn't expect to be seen that day. Not really. Not beyond the mud caked on the soles of someone else's boots. The war was loud elsewhere, in gunfire, in cracked radios, in the shouting of orders and the clanking of weapons. But here, in this dim little corner behind the mess tent, the only sound was her own breath and the scrubbing of a filthy rag across leather. Her name was Private Camila Reyes. 23. Small hands, quick eyes. Too many scars for someone who hadn't fired her weapon in weeks. Not because she didn't know how, but because no one ever gave her the order. She had a different assignment, one that kept her close to the mud, to the stink, to the silence. She cleaned boots. The assignment had come without explanation, like most things in the army. One day she was training with her rifle, the next she was handed a bucket and told to report to supply. No discussion, no appeal, just orders. At first, she thought it was temporary, punishment for some infraction she couldn't remember. But weeks turned into months, and the rifle gathered dust while her hands grew calloused from steel brushes and harsh soap. Every morning before sunrise, they dropped them in a pile outside her tent. Dozens of pairs, sometimes more after a particularly muddy patrol. Combat boots, dress shoes, hiking boots, each one carrying the story of where it had been. She could read the terrain in the treads, smell the smoke in the leather, feel the weight of exhaustion in how they'd been laced. And by midday, she'd have each one lined up again, spotless, polished, and ready to march back into the chaos. No thanks. No eye contact. Just boots in, boots out. The work was methodical, almost meditative. She developed a system. Sort by size, assess the damage, treat the leather, scrub the soles, polish until they gleamed. Her small corner behind the mess tent became her sanctuary, filled with the sharp scent of saddle soap and the rhythm of her own breathing. Sometimes she'd catch fragments of conversation from the tent. Soldiers complaining about the food, sharing letters from home, making plans for when the war ended. She was close enough to hear their humanity, far enough away to remain invisible. She told herself it didn't matter, that staying busy meant staying alive, that maybe this was her way of serving, her way of contributing without adding more violence to the world. She believed that most days. But some days, the silence rotted deeper than the mud. On those days, she'd wonder what her father would think, seeing his daughter on her knees scrubbing other people's dirt. He'd wanted her to be a teacher, to use her quick mind and steady hands to build something instead of cleaning up after others. The other soldiers had their own ways of dealing with the war. Some wrote letters, some played cards, some found religion. Camila found purpose in the small things, ensuring every buckle was tight, every eyelet was clean, every sole was free of stones that might cause a stumble. She knew these boots would carry men through minefields, across rivers, into battles where a single misstep could mean death. If her work could prevent even one accident, one injury, then maybe it mattered. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Not since the second week when she learned tears just fogged up your vision and softened your grip. But there was a weight in her chest that never left, like breathing through water. The weight wasn't self-pity. It was responsibility. Every boot that passed through her hands carried a life, and she felt the burden of that trust even when no one acknowledged it. The routine had become her armor. Wake before dawn, collect the boots, work until her fingers bled, deliver the clean pairs, repeat. She knew which boots belonged to the jokers, which to the quiet ones, which to the officers who never looked her way. She could identify a soldier by his footwear alone. Sergeant Murphy's left boot had a distinctive wear pattern from an old injury. Private Johnson's laces were always double-knotted. Lieutenant Carter's boots were always the muddiest because he led from the front. She was wiping the edge of a steel toe when she heard boots crunching gravel behind her. Normally, she didn't look up. She knew the rhythm of those footsteps, cocky, fast, heavy. They belonged to the men who looked past her. But these steps, they hesitated. They slowed. There was something different in the cadence, a deliberation that made her pause in her work. She kept cleaning, but her attention was divided now. The footsteps stopped just behind her, and she could feel eyes on her back. Not the casual glance of someone passing by, but focused attention. It made her skin prickle with unease. He stopped right in front of her, close enough that his shadow crossed her hands. She could see the outline of his legs, the pristine crease in his uniform pants, the shine of his belt buckle. Officer definitely. But still, she didn't look up. Officers didn't stop for her, didn't acknowledge her existence beyond leaving their boots in the pile with the rest. Still, she didn't look up. "You clean all of these?" The voice was young, smooth, but carried the edge of someone who had already seen things no one should. There was genuine curiosity in the question, not the dismissive tone she was used to. She nodded once, not trusting her voice. She'd grown so accustomed to silence that words felt foreign in her throat. He knelt. That made her flinch, not because she was scared, but because officers didn't kneel next to grunts, let alone the girl with the mud bucket. In her peripheral vision, she could see other soldiers stopping to stare. This was unprecedented. Officers maintained distance, maintained hierarchy. They didn't lower themselves to her level. She glanced at him then. Lieutenant Mason. She'd heard the name before. Fast rise sharpshooter, the one who'd pulled 3 men from a burning jeep last week. They said he never smiled. They said he was all business, all the time. They said he treated every mission like it was life or death, because it usually was. He was smiling now. Not a big smile, not the kind that lit up his whole face, but a small, genuine expression that transformed his features. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd expected, maybe 25, with tired eyes that had seen too much but still held kindness. "You saved my foot," he said. She blinked, not understanding. Saved his foot? She'd never even spoken to him before, never been on a mission with him. How could she have saved anything? He pointed to the boot in her hand. "That's mine. I almost stepped on a pressure mine yesterday. But your polish caught the glint. I saw it just in time." His voice was matter-of-fact, but she could hear the weight of what he was saying. A pressure mine. One step, and he would have been gone. She looked down at the boot. Same as any other. Dull brown leather, torn at the edge, still warm from the sun. But now she could see what he meant. The way the light caught the leather where she'd worked the polish into the grain. The way it reflected just enough to catch the eye. Such a small thing, such an insignificant detail, and yet... "I didn't do anything," she muttered, the words barely audible. She'd just been doing her job, following her routine. There was nothing heroic about cleaning boots. He tilted his head, studying her with those tired but kind eyes. "You didn't fire a weapon, but you gave me back my step. That counts." There was conviction in his voice, certainty that what she did mattered. And then he did something that shouldn't have shocked her, but did. He extended his hand, not like a superior greeting a subordinate, not like a performance review or a formal acknowledgement, just one soldier to another, one human being to another. His hand was steady, waiting, patient. Her hand hovered midair, still clutching the dirty rag. Her nails were chipped from the harsh chemicals, her palms raw from scrubbing, her knuckles burned from the cold water she used every morning. These weren't the hands of a warrior, weren't the hands that belonged in the same space as an officer's. No one had ever shaken her hand out here. No one had ever offered her that basic gesture of respect and acknowledgement. She dropped the rag, watching it fall to the ground like a discarded piece of her old identity. Took his hand. It was firm, warm, real, calloused from his own work, scarred from his own battles, but extended in genuine respect. For a moment, they were just two people who had found each other in the chaos of war. And in that moment, every hour she'd spent bent over Boots, every day she'd been invisible, cracked open and poured out through her eyes. Not tears, not quite. But something heavier. Relief, maybe. Recognition. The feeling of being seen after so long in the shadows. He stood, gave her a small nod. The kind soldiers gave each other after a successful mission, and turned back toward camp. But something had shifted in those few minutes. Something fundamental and irreversible. She watched him walk away, noting the confident stride, the straight shoulders, the way other soldiers automatically moved aside for him. But more importantly, she noticed something else. For the first time, other soldiers had stopped moving. They were staring. Not at the lieutenant, though he commanded attention wherever he went. At her. A few even looked down at their boots, perhaps for the first time really seeing them, really thinking about the work that went into making them clean and functional. She went back to work, but the weight in her chest had shifted. It was still there, but different now. Not the weight of invisibility, but the weight of responsibility acknowledged. She picked up her rag and returned to the boot. But her movements were different, more confident, more purposeful. But something had changed. The next morning, a note came with the boots. Folded carefully and tucked into the tongue of a combat boot she recognized as belonging to Private Rodriguez. Her hands shook slightly as she unfolded it. "Ma'am, these kept me dry crossing the river. You've got magic hands." "Ma'am." Not girl, not private, not hey you. "Ma'am." The simple word carried weight, carried respect she'd never received before. She smiled. Just a little, but it felt like the first real smile she'd managed in months. Then another note appeared the next day, this one wedged into the laces of a pair of dress shoes. "Couldn't make inspection without you. Thank you." Then one more the day after that. "You saved more lives than you know. Your work matters." By the end of the week, they started bringing the boots in themselves instead of just dropping them in a pile. Some of them stayed, talked, asked her name, told her about their missions, their families, their fears. She learned that Private Johnson double-knotted his laces because his little brother had taught him the technique. She learned that Sergeant Murphy's limp came from shrapnel that had torn through his calf, and that he worried every day about slowing down his unit. She never asked for it. She never needed it. But somewhere between the mud and the silence, she had earned it. Respect. Not because of rank or position or the ability to carry a weapon, but because she showed up every day when no one noticed, no one cared, and still gave everything she had. And one by one, They started seeing her, not as the girl who cleaned the mud off their boots, but as the reason they kept walking. The recognition spread slowly through the camp. Officers began nodding to her when they passed. Enlisted men started saying good morning. Someone left her extra rations from the mess hall. Another soldier brought her better cleaning supplies from his care package. Small gestures, but they added up to something larger. A place in the community she'd never had before. Sometimes, war isn't won in the firefight. Sometimes it's won in the quiet moments between battles, in the small acts of service that keep an army functioning. Sometimes victory comes from the people who ensure that when the shooting starts, everyone is ready. Sometimes it's won in quiet corners, by hands that never shook from fear, only from cold, by hearts that carried the weight no one else saw, by the ones who never fired a bullet, but saved lives just the same. Not all heroes come home in flags. Some come home quietly, without fanfare, without medals or recognition. But they come home knowing they served, knowing they mattered, knowing they were part of something larger than themselves. Some come home in silence, with hands still stained by the mud they refused to leave behind. And in those stains, in that silence, there is honor. There is service. There is heroism of the quietest, most essential kind.